yes, another worker box. So you know what this means? I was sent a box from a company to do a review on, but this is something that's actually kind of interesting, because this is something that will be relevant to anybody who's doing a Flywheel build, or in this case specifically, a Stryfe/Rapid Strike. This worker box was sent to me from BANGGOOD to do a review on, and you can find links to buy this product down in the description box below, and I thank them profusely for sending this to me, and it is something that I've kind of wanted to toy with for a while. As you can see, it is a complete Flywheel cage, motor, and flywheel with barrel, and the wires to do stuff with replacement kit. Like, super serious and easy. This is everything in one package. You don't have to think, you just have to put stuff together. That being said, is this any good? I honestly do not know. And I honestly wonder, because I know the worker wheels in general, at least the old ones, were really good. The plastic ones, these are aluminum. But these aren't the aluminum ones that require any kind of, like, setting stuff in there or anything. They're actually, like, just push on the motors and they're good to go. They have, like, plastic inserts or rubber inserts or some sort in there. And they are teethed a little bit, but let's see if I can put these together. It seems like a pretty decent setup, even a decent amount of crush right there. Let's grab a dart for comparison. Yeah, that's pretty decent, I would say. But there are a lot of these cages. I know they make like a blue one and a pink one and stuff like that. I have no idea what the differences in those cages are. All I can tell you is that I have this one. It is the red wheels with the silver cage, and I have the motors that come with it. I highly doubt these are any good. These actually look like they're 132s, if I'm not mistaken. They do look slightly bigger than normal. In fact, do I have a... Here's fangs. Yes, these motors are in fact 132 size, so that's a good thing to know. But all of this should be able to fit in your Stryfe/Rapid Strike, since they use the same kind of cage. And this is probably the most interesting thing, because it has its own built-in friction fit barrel material, which is quite long, but that's pretty darn good. There is no dart guide, which may be an issue. There is absolutely no dart guide on that. And it even comes with wire, screws for motor mounting, and a micro switch, so you can replace that. That is a lot of stuff to get. It is a pretty expensive kit. As you can imagine, these things are not super cheap. It'll run you about 50 bucks, 45, 50 bucks for this entire setup. And, well, you'll get to see me put this in a Stryfe and then see exactly what it does performance-wise, and debate if you want to get this for yourself. I have no idea. Hopefully it hitches like a... Hopefully it hits a pretty good number. I am just going to use the stock motors it comes with and see exactly how good this thing is. It is nice they do give you plenty of wire, screws, and so forth, because you're going to need those. And not having to buy extras is good. So, first things first, we are going to take our motors and slot them in here. We're going to want to make sure that these motors are opposite of each other. Even labels positive and negative, so that's nice. Then we're going to grab the screws out of this container here. The screws out of here. This screwdriver might be a little too big. Let's give it a shot anyway. Nope! We needed to have a small screwdriver for this, of course. That's going to keep our motors from ever coming loose, which is good, and will also reduce vibration. I'm expecting this cage setup to be very quiet, because it is a metal cage, and of course, everything's going to be rock solid together. There we go, motors installed. Next up, the flywheels themselves. They are going to friction fit onto the motor shafts. And they are an extremely tight fit, holy crap. Wow, and there is no, on this cage at least, there is no way to remove the flywheels from the bottom, so these might never come off. I might never get to test these with different motors in it, so hopefully these ones are good. The funniest part about these motors are, I don't know if they are 3S or 2S. I believe I looked on one website, and it said they were a 3S, but I remember watching a video from, I believe it was Tom from Foam Data Services, and he said they were 2S. So I'm just going to test it with both and see which ones get the higher FPS values. I think that's about as far on as those are going to go. That was Oh my god. Can you... Ooh. That is a lot of grip. I've used these little micro switches before and never really had a problem with them, so this should work fine. It's way better than this thing, which I've already cut off. This is actually the micro switch that goes back there. We're just going to remove that, replace it with that. Normally you can print out some kind of snazzy mounting plate for it. I just usually clip and hot glue them in, and that works fine for me. There is another part that we're going to use for this, and that is the worker extended pusher, which was also sent to me from BANGGOOD. This piece right here is actually, if I match this up, longer than the stock pusher, and what that's going to help us do is that's going to give us a lot more consistent pushing of the dart into the actual flywheels, which will help with loading and firing. You can see it's just a hair bigger, but big enough to actually matter. There we go. Just a little bit longer, but it's enough to actually give us a little bit better tactile feel when we're using our blaster. So we're going to replace and put that in there as well. That will have a secondary function for when I complete the mod to this blaster. It is another piece that is required for what Quincy is going to become. So we are just going to simply remove this piece right here, since we basically have to anyway to get the rest of this stuff. This right here is, I believe, your thermistor and everything like that. We're going to remove that. We're going to do a complete rewire of this blaster. So we're going to unscrew that and basically just clip this free. Now normally you do want to keep at least this micro switch right here, because this one is what holds your jam door close. So it doesn't hurt anything by just sitting in there disconnected from anything. And normally, I mean, you don't have to, but it's a pain to wire this lock in there. I have a use for this lock in a different Stryfe. So I am actually going to remove this lock completely, but I'm going to save the pieces, for I have plans for them in a different build. And we are going to remove this micro switch as well. We're going to remove this right here, which closes down the wires. It's not an important part to put back in, but it's always nice to have. So that reveals the wires, and then last but certainly not least, we're going to remove the Stryfe Flywheel Cage, because that is going to be completely replaced. Couple of things. I'm finding out very quickly that the amount of wire they give you is simply not enough. A little disappointing. I don't even know what half these little tiny pieces are for. I'm just going to ignore those, and I'm going to use my own wire. The other thing is that, of course, these will not fit. This cage won't fit in there unless you cut out these pieces right there, which is perfectly fine. They're not doing anything now that we have longer motors in there, but a pair of hobby snips would be pretty good for something like this, or you can use a Zacto blade or something to get it. And with those removed, cage fits perfectly fine. Well, let me say perfectly. There we go. Yep. That's much better. That. Ooh, there's still a little bit of... I have to do something to this, too, to get this to fit through. Son of a dickens. You think you have everything figured out, and then something else gets... Oh, wait. Oh, there we go. But wait, yeah, I need the... Son of a... I need that like that, because that fits in there perfectly. But that doesn't fit through there. I might have to bust out the Dremel for this one. Heat up our soldering iron here. I don't know what these resistors and stuff are supposed to do on there. I honestly don't, and my gut almost tells me to remove them, but since I want to do this kit justice, again, not much I can do with the just minuscule amount of wire they give you, but I want to try to do this as cleanly as possible, so I'm going to keep those on there against my better judgment. First thing we need to do is we need to tin these contacts, so it'd be much easier to attach our wire to. And the way we're going to do that is wait for our soldering iron to heat up just a little bit, And then once we can just put some solder on each of those points, then we can attach the wire to it, and we can daisy chain the wire through here and get everything up and running. So we put solder on the end of our iron, and then just tin in the contacts. There we go. Clean that off. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to tin these wires. These wires are huge, so they require a lot of heat in order to tin. Could really use a new pair of handy hands. I don't even know what happened to my other set. Alright, we've got our wires tinned, we've got our contacts tinned. Everything's kind of getting ready for that point. I normally want to try to... Let's see here. Alrighty, just cut down that orange barrel material. Pretty much had to. Didn't really have a choice, and gonna find out later I totally had a choice. But I'm pretty sure I got that perfect. Maybe? Maybe? No? Yeah. Perfect. Oh, love it when things work out the way I planned them to. That, I mean, as cool as that is, that doesn't really have a purpose anymore. That is a long barrel for a Stryfe, man. Let me tell you, usually they're like barely anything. This time it's freaking long. That is a really nice setup too. I like how easily that nests into that aluminum right there. So we've got that ready. Basically, just here, we just need to wire it up. And here we are with the entire kit assembled and installed perfectly, I would hope. We've got, of course, the Flywheel Cage up here. Everything's good. Flywheels are spinning. If I tighten these screws too far down, it actually stops working. So the cage isn't, like, super perfectly on there. I'm guessing that's because I use such thick wire with 132s, but what the heck ever. Next up, we've got the extended pusher. Now, this thing is only just slightly longer than the original. It is not a whole lot, but what this does do is allow you to shoot those slightly shorter darts, as well as just give you a better feel for the trigger pull overall. So that's a nice little thing to have thrown in there, especially for what I have planned for Quincy here. And then, of course, we've got the micro switch right here. It's just hot glued. I basically just removed this little space down here and hot glued it in there. Works perfectly fine. I've got a 2S LiPo here, and it's hooked up to my XT60 connector right there. We're gonna plug this sucker in. Come on. There we go. And rev it up. Again, that's on a 2S. That's pretty scary. I remember seeing these were 11-volt motors, but that's just ridiculous. Seriously, that is stupid. Let's try it. on a 3S really quick, just to see what actually happens. Yeah, that's a bit scarier. But again, I don't know if that's actually overvolting the motors or not, so, I don't quite know. I'm not quite sure. I will test it on both really quick just to see what actually happens, but that is a very beastie cage and blaster, and hopefully these flywheels are pretty good. I did shoot one dart out of it really quick with my fingers just to test it, and it seemed pretty scary, so let's run it through the chronograph and see exactly what's going on with this thing, and then give you my ultimate conclusion. I don't know how, but some way I'm going to be able to fit this in here and these up here. I seriously, I don't even know how this is going to go. But anyway, you're probably wondering how the testing went with the worker cage, and I'm pleased to report it went rather well. At least I think it did. Now, the first problem I had is that this sucker would not fire if it was totally screwed together. It's rubbing right, you can kind of see it. These, the screw post up here is actually rubbing against the wheels. I'm, again, guessing that's because I used too thick a wire and there just isn't enough room in here, because if I screwed this all the way down it still wasn't going. That may be an issue you have. I'm just going to chalk it up to my own incompetence. However, unscrewing this to make it work perfectly fine, so who the heck cares? And the results were pretty satisfactory. Now with the 2S LiPo being like this one right here, which if you cut out this spot right here, like I've done on this Stryfe, like that, you can actually fit this completely in there, which is what people like. So yeah, with that LiPo, I was getting a high of like 136, an average of like 128 with a little bit of deviation, but not a whole lot. And that's pretty good considering like when I did the Artifact Cage with Hellcats on a 3S graphene, inside of the Rage of Dust I was getting like a high of 135, and this is beating that. Now, this setup right here with the Fangs, I haven't completely tested the Fangs, Fang revamps, but the original Fangs with the Morpheus cage, I believe this is a 4.3 or 4.25 millimeter cage with a Morpheus guide, this thing gives me 150s. And honestly, this is about as expensive of a setup as this one. But I had to source all these parts individually. These were, you know, $16 flywheel. These are like a $10 or so aluminum insert. The cage itself is either free if you can print it yourself for the price of the filament, or you can buy one from, again, like it's like 10, 15 bucks on some places. And the motors themselves, things weren't that expensive. I think they're about $6 each. 6 to 7 bucks each, so it really balances out to be the same thing, but this is a whole bunch of different parts. This was one part, and your mileage with this kind of stuff varies. However, the biggest problem I had is that this cage would not fire normal streamline darts, or, well, elite darts, and neither would this one. I tried to fire normal elite darts out of this thing, and they basically did nothing, so I fired nothing but the AccuFakes, which I think is completely fair because AccuFakes are pretty much ubiquitous now. I don't know, if you're going to be using elite darts of any kind, I don't know why you wouldn't be using AccuFakes, because they just work the best that I've seen. And I'm pretty pleased with that performance. I did put a 3S LiPo in this and tested it, and it did work, but it sounds like death, and it got me a couple more FPS, and honestly it wasn't worth it, because obviously it was overloading the motors. There's no way around that. So I would say if you're looking at getting a cage like that, you wanted the metal cage with the metal flywheels and everything like that. And again, those aren't even optimum motors. With something like Fangs inside this cage, you could probably get a lot better of performance out of it. I just tested what was in the box and I was quite pleased. So, yeah, that might be something you'd be interested in, and for the asking price, I think it's perfectly reasonable. The biggest thing being is that this cage will probably melt in the summer. This one's made of aluminum. I don't think it's going to be melting anytime soon unless you played Nerf on the surface of the sun, but whatever. I actually am fairly happy with how this thing worked out, and the extended pusher, I didn't notice a whole lot of change with it. It does make it, there's that satisfying click at the very end of the trigger pull, and it seemed to help a lot more having that little bit extra on it, but I'm guessing the biggest point of using this is like if you have this. I know it will help with what I have planned with this thing, which is not a normal operation of this blaster whatsoever. But, I mean, if you're shooting with slightly shorter darts, it will work with that, like maybe like the Zuru darts or something. That will help quite a bit. There is a reason to it. It's not a very expensive part, so I can recommend picking it up if you're doing something fancy like I am. But, yeah, honestly, I'm pretty happy, and I want to thank BANGGOOD for sending me this kit and being overall pretty patient. You can see right there where I tried to force it down. It did not like me whatsoever. Again, I usually when I do the 132s, I cut the motor tabs down and everything like that, but these are actually, because of having that PCB and stuff on the end of it, they're slightly longer than normal 132s, so it might be a little more difficult to put these in. Something like this, you may want to actually like cut out spots for the motors, because while it did technically work, it barely worked at all. And if you don't want to use the motors, the cages and stuff are still pretty expensive. So it kind of depends. If you're just somebody who wants to buy a LiPo, buy a charger, and buy a flywheel setup, throw it in a blaster and not have to worry about having a billion different parts, I can definitely recommend picking up the worker cages. They do come in a variety of colors for whatever blaster. They have canted, non-canted, kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're just wondering how this one worked, it worked perfectly fine. So if you're looking for a starting point and getting into high-powered flywheel blasters, this is an excellent launching point, although you can get yourself slightly better performance and slightly better deals by picking and choosing the parts out yourself. Something like this. This is from like, you know, 4 different manufacturers actually, because Morpheus Guide, Open Flywheel Project Cage, that can't be, like, you'd either order from them or print it out yourself or have somebody else print it. The Cyclone wheels from Containment Crew and the Fang motors from Foam Blast. That's a lot of different parts, so, or just buy one part. And honestly, this barrel is super legit awesome. That's my favorite part about the entire thing. This thing, even with this long barrel on there, it was still getting good FPS. Like, I would say 136 is perfectly good for just about any super stock war. That's about the upper limit for what these kind of darts can do without fishtailing all over the place. So yeah, I definitely like that, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed it, and there will be links for the product down in the description box below. This has been Walcom at 7's Hands. Thank you very much for watching this video, and of course I hope to see you in an entirely different one, and I gotta fix this thing. I have a war in about 24 hours from now. And I need to fix the Stryfe and get it up and running and get this ammo counter installed before that. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but stay tuned.